says that every single individual, every single era of history, and all of the world as a whole, it all has to be viewed as one thing. It's just different chapters, but something that happens in chapter 1 affects what happens in chapter 3, right? It's like the butterfly effect. You guys know about the butterfly effect, right? If you flap your wings here, your spiritual wings here, so you affect people elsewhere, right? There's a famous story of the Chafetz Chaim that he was old. He lived to be, not 100% sure, but most people say he lived to be about 104. And when he was very old, he used to still daven nates, and his body was not cooperating with him, and his body, it was very hard for him to pick up his head at a certain point, but he would still daven nates every day. And so they asked him, Rabbi, why do you have to daven nates? There's also a minyan at 7. There's a minyan at 8. Yeah. All these years you've been davening nates. Right? Everybody understands. At your age, it's difficult. He said, if I daven nates here, so in Paris they daven at 7 o'clock or at 8 o'clock. But if I daven at 7 or 8 o'clock here, so then they're not going to be davening at all in Paris, right? Which is Paris was like just, they didn't literally mean Paris, but meaning. So we affect things, but not just that. We also affect things in the past generations. We affect things in the future generations, right? I think I told you the story about Rabbi Gidl Leitner. He was in the Holocaust. He was a Talmud Chacham. He was a Mashpia. He was a Ger Chassid, and he was in camp after camp. One of these stories in the Holocaust, and then at the end of the war, he was in the death marches. He was in one of the death marches, and he was going, and he felt like, that's it. I've had enough. I can't do it anymore. He started slowing down, right? And he was basically saying goodbye. And one of his friends noticed that he was slowing down, and so he screamed at him. He said, "Get the life, run!" And he gave him a zetz. He woke him up, and he kept on running. For some reason, just hearing that, that word of encouragement, of strength, it gave him a little bit of strength, and he kept on going, and he survived the war. He ended up coming to Israel. He had a big family. He had thousands of students, and he was a mashpia for a whole generation of young chassidim, right? And all that was really from the 2 words from his friend that gave him a little bit of encouragement at a moment of need, right? So did that person at that moment was he thinking about all the future generations, right, that they're gonna be affected by this great time? No. He was just at that moment, right? When you put on tefillin this today, when you say a bracha, when you do an act of kindness, are you thinking about your great-grandchildren? Are you thinking about your great-grandparents? Are you thinking about all the previous and all the future generations? Right? It says in the future that everything that we do is written. It says in Pirkei Avot. Every single act that we do, right? And after 120 years, when we go up to Shemaim, so then everything is replayed for us. We hear everything. It says, Afilu sicha kala. Even like the conversations that you had with your wife. Will you take out the garbage? Sure thing, honey. That's going to get played back for you. You're going to hear everything. Nothing is lost, right? It says in Pirkei Avot. Every act you did is written in a book, right? So it doesn't mean just it's written in a book so you can afterwards watch the reruns. It means it affects something. It goes somewhere. It does something. Rav Kook says when you view life in that way, that's called godless. I'm sorry to belabor this point, but I feel like it's really, really important because I feel like we have to constantly fight against the disjointed nature of things, the way that everything looks unrelated to each other, right? You do something over here.
So what is it called?
Gadlut, right? This is gadlut. So my Rav Chaimwitz Shlita always used to say that the definition of godless, of gadlut, of greatness, is that he sees everything together in one context, right? The definition of katnut is that everything is separate. You have 2 kids, right? I've said this to you guys before, that, like they get in a fight, Yaakov's not my friend anymore. But Yaakov's your best friend. No, he made me upset, he's not my friend anymore. 2 seconds later, they're best friends again, right? There's no connection. Nobody's hurt, offended. Wait a minute. No, not so easy, Moshe. You said I'm not your friend, I can't be your friend, right? They don't hold grudges. right? They could do in kids. I don't know if you guys have looked in a gun recently. See little kids, they can be terribly cruel to each other, and 2 seconds later they're best friends. There's no resentment. There's no holding grudges, right? And also their own behavior, right? They don't see any problem, right? If I told you guys, no, you're not my friends anymore, right? And the next day I say, okay, you are my friends. I'm going to feel embarrassed about that because I'm going to remember what I said yesterday, right? Right? So godless is that everything is within one context. I see that everything is together, right? And that's why a gadol, Adam gadol, a person who becomes a very, very great person, even when nobody's looking, even the small moments, right? It means something, right? There's a famous story you guys have probably heard about the Stipler going, B'nai Brak, that on the day of a bar mitzvah, there was a boy in the neighborhood that had a bar mitzvah, and after the minyan, they saw the Stipler came to the minyan, which is very unusual, and he waited until the end of the minyan, and he went up and he spoke to the boy for something, and nobody knew what he was saying. He walked out. He shook the boy's hand. They said, who is this boy that the Stipler the Godless came to his bar mitzvah? So they asked him what he said. He said he apologized to me. Why? He said because when I was 8 years old, he felt like maybe he had said something to offend me. I was there with my father, and maybe he said something that was offensive to me. He was waiting until I was bar mitzvah so I could be a man, and he could apologize to me. And then he found out, right? Think about that. From 8 to 13, it's 5 years. Godless had a lot of things going on in those 5 years, right? But he made sure, because no, even that act has to be within the context. All of it is together. There's no separation, right? Rav Steinman. After this, we'll go back to Rav Steinman. One time he lived also to be very old, also B'nai Brak, and he one time somebody asked him, Rebbe's never taught us about the mitzvah of kibud aveim. So he said, I'm not befitting to speak about that mitzvah. I can't speak about that mitzvah. So Rabbi taught us every mitzvah in the book. Why not this one? He didn't want to say. Finally, some of his children pulled it out of him. When he was a boy, he didn't like rice, and his mother made rice one night, and he didn't eat it. That's the story. My mother made food, and I didn't eat it. So he felt like he had such a blemish in the mitzvah of honoring your mother and father that he's not. How could I'm going to now teach? That's very what's the word I'm looking? It's hypocritical, right? Even though I don't know. Did you guys ever not eat anything that your mother made? We're in trouble if that's the measurement. But a gadol, even 80 years, 90 years later, he's still doing tshuva over that. Right? It's all in one context. But so that's even just in our own life. Even to do it in our own life is an amazing thing, right? To see everything as one, and all has to be unified. But kol shekin, all the more so to see it. If I affect you and you affect me, we affect the world, future generations, past generations, right? But when you view it like that, when you view the whole story of creation as one story, it's not just in the Chumash, it's one story, and now it's really what it says on CNN and on J-Post. No, it's one story. It's one story. We're still in that story, and we affect it, right? So then that brings a person a tremendous amount of das, a tremendous amount of wisdom, and that brings tshuva, and that's what brings us to tshuva. It helps us become aware of all the things that we can elevate and become better. Okay. So that was now. You're gonna start the recording now. Yeah. Oh, we're recording. Okay. Okay. Now we're gonna move to Hey. Hey, Rav Kook says the following. באמת אי אפשר להתרומם אל התשובה הרוחנית של ישועת הכלל בלי תשובה פנימית עמוקה מכל חטא ועוון. Says Rav Kook that in reality a person can't really elevate to the level where he has a spiritual yearning for the redemption of the klal, of the community, of the world, global redemption, to really want that, unless he precedes it with his own personal inner tshuva, and he sees himself coming free from his own sins and from his own limitations. What does that mean? That by nature we think about ourselves. By nature we're concerned about our own well-being, right? And we're not necessarily concerned about other people's well-being. It depends on, it varies depending on how you grew up and what your community was like, society. But even if you grew up in a very benevolent society, still, nevertheless, your main concern is yourself, right?
Even if you help someone, you normally think about how it will help you.
Right. What am I gonna get out of it? Right. And if I'm not gonna get from them, so what kind of sachar I'm gonna get? Right. Even a person could be, keeping mitzvahs in a beautiful, beautiful way, but he's still just thinking about himself, right? And he has lots of aspirations for himself, a lot of hopes for himself, what he's going to reach, right? But this is actually what one of the things, one of the commentaries say about the spies. When the spies came into Israel, the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Meraglim, is that they were really great men. These were leaders of the generation. So what was their sin? So some commentaries say it was because they had in Yiddish you call it a steller. They had a great position in the Midbar, in the desert. They were rabbis, they were leaders, right? To think about going to Eretz Yisrael, the whole situation is going to change. Maybe I'm not going to be so great in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe I'm not going to have my position of honor when I come to Eretz Yisrael, right? So they were thinking about their own position. Another commentary says that even on a spiritual level, they felt so close to God in the desert. They were surrounded by the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory. They were eating man. They were drinking from the well of Miriam. It was an idyllic existence. It was almost like being in the womb. It was such a felt presence of God, closeness with God. They were scared. Now I'm gonna have to go there, and who knows what it's gonna be, right? They were thinking about their own spiritual level, as opposed to what a Kodesh Baruch Hu wants. Hashem says, what if Hashem told you this? If you're a Navi of Hashem, you're a prophet of Hashem, you have tremendous light, tremendous closeness to God, and Hashem says, I want to take all that away from you, and you're just going to work hard and sweat for the rest of your life to plant vegetables and fruits in Eretz Yisrael, right? To help build up Am Yisrael, people right now, they're in the army. All of our brothers that are in the army right now, that some of them have jobs that some of them are in kollel, they're learning all day long, they're working on themselves spiritually, and now go and sit and sweat and go fight, right? Sometimes it's not easy to do that. Sometimes you're thinking about your own Dalet Amos, my own spiritual aspirations or physical aspirations, right? The only way that I can come out of that, says Rav Kook, and to yearn for the greatness of the klal, and therefore be willing to do something for the klal, is first if I have experience my own inner redemption, right? My own level of tshuva. If you've never gone through one cycle of tshuva in your life, so you can't understand what that redemption feels like. But once you experience it on a personal level, so then you can have the wherewithal to think, wow, on a global level, what would that be like? Right? Imagine if what you feel on Motzei Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur, imagine if the whole world could feel that together. Right? Think about that. Right? But only if you've experienced it yourself on an individual level can you even dream like that. Right? Like the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says that there's something called a Geula Pratit, an individual, private, personal redemption, and then there's a Geula Klalit, the redemption that we're all talking about, the redemption of the world, redemption of Am Yisrael. She says, but the first, he says exactly like Rav Kook is probably based on that you have to first have a personal redemption, and that leads to the general redemption of everybody else. Right, which is very important. You think it's kind of like maybe like beating a dead horse by saying it over and over, but it's actually really important because a lot of times, especially like in Machon Meir, and one second, just say this one comment, in the Leumi Hashkafa, a lot of times there's talk. It's always about the klal. You guys have probably hear it a lot in Machon Meir. Thinking about klal Yisrael and Am Yisrael. Don't think about just your own personal, right? So it's true. But the only way that you can really come to that and be real about that is by experiencing it on your own personal level, right? To imagine how Am Yisrael is going to have this amazing relationship with God is only when you can imagine having your own relationship with God. But just don't get stuck there. Don't stay there just thinking about yourself and your own relationship with God. Yeah.
רציתי רק לשאול, לכאורה המרגלים, כאילו יוצאים פה מצב של הקדוש ברוך הוא ברמה שלו להיכנס לארץ, כביכול, אני אומר כאילו כביכול, כן, לא חסב שלום הם אמרו את זה. כביכול הם אומרים, אנחנו יותר מבינים מהקדוש ברוך הוא, אנחנו עכשיו ניכנס לארץ, אז מה שנקרא פה שיממון רוחני. כאילו יוצא פה מצב של חשבונות שמיים. שאני מנסה, כאילו רציתי לשאול הרב, כאילו, מה, איך אני אגיד את זה, כאילו, מאיפה זה הגיע? הרי אם יש מה שנקרא הנחיה מהקדוש ברוך הוא כאילו ברורה, אז איפה המקום פה של שכולם הפרטים, הרי מה שנקרא הקדוש ברוך הוא יודע מה הוא עושה. אז כאילו למה לחשוב שזה טעות?
מאיפה זה מגיע, כאילו, איך האדם מגיע לזה? איך הוא...
כן, זה לא אדם פשוט, זה אנשים, זה גדולי דור, זה חכמים מאוד מאוד גדולים.
כן.
זה מה ש... אם בן אדם פשוט לא אומר את זה, אז כאילו לא הייתי מתייחס אליו, כאילו הכל בסדר. אבל הם מה שנקרא העיניים של העדה. לפיהם מה שנקרא יש דבר, כאילו, הם המובילים, את המקורת.
כן.
אז כאילו, אם הקדוש ברוך הוא אומר לי להיכנס לארץ, אז כאילו, מה המקום פה לחששות של האובדן הרוחני והכל, וצריך עכשיו להיות את הארץ, איזה באס הוא מה שנקרא נדפק.
Okay. So the question was, to translate the question for everybody, that going back to what we were talking about, the spies. The spies were great people. They were leaders of the generation. They weren't simple people. So, and it sounds like according to that commentary that we said, what they're doing is they're making a cheshbon. Hashem said one thing, but they're thinking of something. They're putting their head, so to speak, where it's not supposed to be. Let Hashem tell you what to do, right? Don't tell Hashem what to do. But they were really kind of deciding for themselves. So the question was, how could they fall into that? If I understand correctly, how could they fall into that mistake? Like, where did that? How does a person fall into such a mistake like that? Yeah. So there's a lot of different answers you could give to that, and there's a lot of commentaries about what exactly was the sin of the spies. Why, right? And I mean, ad infinitum. There's so many different ways to understand it, but in the context of what we're saying, is how I view it, that commentary specifically, we don't really know, right? But we have to learn from it, is that even on a great level, a person can make a mistake. And not only a mistake, but a person can meaning the human nature that affects even the person on the lowest level also affects the person on the highest level, right? And then in the end of the day, you know, like in Chassidut, there's a lot of focus on bitul, nullifying yourself to Hashem, right? Total nullification to Hashem, to the point where you're just a vessel, you're just a conduit for Hashem, right? Like it says about Avraham Avinu in the Akedah, it says that vayishlach et yado, he sent out his hand. I think we spoke about this, right? He sent out his hand. Why does he have to send out his hand? That's not how we talk. Right? If I'm reaching your hand to shake your hand, I don't have to send out my hand, right? Like I have to call my hand. Listen, I want you to go, right? So he said because the Bnei Yissaschar says that because the Avot HaKadoshim were so nullified to Hashem that their bodies couldn't physically go against Hashem. It was impossible for them to do it. So Avraham Avinu, though, here he is at the Akedah. Hashem told him to take up his son, right? To bind Yitzchak, to take Yitzchak for an olah. And he found that his hand is not going. He couldn't believe it. But Hashem told me to do this. So he had to forcibly overcome his body's nature and to send out his hand to go do it. Because really Hashem didn't want him to do it. That's why his hand really was complying with Ratzon Hashem. Does that make sense? Right? But he had to force himself to do it, which was very unusual for him. His body naturally flowed with Ratzon Hashem, right? So, but if a person doesn't have that level of bittul, so then they're subject to making a mistake, and that's also the place where we need what's called das Torah, dat Torah. You have to have a Rabbi, you have to have a Rav, you have to have someone that's bigger than you. And the Farshim say, Aseh lecha Rav, in Pirkei Avot it says to make yourself a Rav, even if you're greater than him in Torah. Yeah. He's your student, right? He could be your student in Torah. Make him your Rav if there's no other Rav available. Meaning everybody has to have somebody that he answers to, so to speak, that he gets advice from, that when he's confused, he asks somebody, right? And so it's so important. But Koshukin, we need someone that, that's greater than us. But, they didn't listen to the Eitzah of the tzaddik in that situation. So, okay, let's go weiter. So when Rav Kook and hey, we finished the first sentence. Second sentence is Omnam Yachid Sheshav B'Muvan Zeh. when an individual does tshuva with this, in this context, with this understanding, which understanding? That I'm not just doing tshuva for myself. I'm doing tshuva for the world. I'm affecting my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, every other Jew, every person in the world. I'm fixing things from past generations, right? You guys know that the Arizal says that in these generations, everything that happens to us, it's all a tikkun. We're all doing stuff. We're all fixing things from that happened in the past, previous incarnations. Klal Yisrael that needs things to be fixed, right? We have challenges in this generation that that have never been before. Nothing even close to what we have in this generation, right? We have past generations that have had many challenges, but the ones we have now are off the charts, right? Never been anything like this. And why? So the Arizal explains, because we're fixing things, right? So if I do tshuva with this context, this is not just about Micha and Lashon Hara in this particular moment. I am doing tshuva over that, but it's not just that. This is for Am Yisrael, right? I'm doing this for Klal Yisrael. I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for my grandchildren. I'm doing this for every other Jew. I'm doing this to make it that in Paris they have an easier time getting to Shachris in the morning, right? I'm in Yerushalayim. I've got a bigger responsibility, right? This is what I'm doing. I'm not doing it for myself. So that says Rav Kook, if a person does tshuva in this way, with this mentality, mochalim lo l'chol ha'olam kulo. Not only is he atoned for and forgiven, but the entire world is atoned for and forgiven because of him. Right? Like it says in the Gemara, Hayachid Sheshav, mochalim lo l'chol ha'olam. An individual that does tshuva, he's forgiven and the whole world is forgiven with him. But Rav Kook says, but dafka when you're doing it with this mentality. If you're just thinking about, okay, I don't want to go up to heaven and have, I don't want to end up in Gehenna. That's Aleph. And I don't want my Gan Eden to be less great than it could be. So I'm doing tshuva Rabbanu Shalom. I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about everybody. וכן יכולים רבים להתעלות לתכונה האידיאלית הגנוזה בנשמת האומה על ידי תשובת היחיד. It's just very, 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 very deep and beautiful. Rav Kook is saying here. It said also, sorry, one second, I have a note here. This is also a Jew that doesn't behave like a Jew. He doesn't even know what a Jew is supposed to behave like, right? Well, he's never seen the exalted nature of a refined Jew, right? You guys ever met a refined Jew? A person with refined midot. A yid who, not just because there's good people that also good yid that don't keep mitzvot. Also, I'm saying someone who, through the Torah, through being a Jew, living a life of a Jew, you see that they've reached a level of this is special. You feel like you're in front of greatness. You feel like you're in front of purity and holiness. You guys ever met a Jew like that? When you see a Jew like that, you realize this is what I don't know, a tzaddik. There's particular tzaddikim that I know in Yerushalayim that when you go to their shiur, at the end of the shiur, I always think to myself, I don't remember anything he just said, but I loved it every moment of it. But all I'm left with is this one feeling: I want to be like you. Right? What you're doing for your soul and for the rest of the world, I want to do that. Right? You believe it, you get it, and you're doing it. And look who you've become, what you've become, right? So the nature of his soul is no different from yours. It's no different from mine, no different from any Jew. He's just aware of it. He's going through with it. He's following it, right? No different, lahavdil, of a person on his body, a person who's in excellent shape. Their body's a temple. They eat great, they exercise, they feel good, they're strong, they're robust, They're not that, right? You look at that and wow, that's what a body is supposed to be like, right? So this is what a soul is supposed to be like. This is right. So Rav Kook says you can bring you can bring many people to reveal the ideal nature of their Jewish soul that's inside of them, to reveal it, right? By you revealing it in yourself. Right? Sometimes it's very hard to be the tzaddik in a group. Sometimes it's very hard to be different from everybody else. Everybody else is being cynical. Everybody else is cracking jokes. Everybody is, and I'm not saying you're not allowed to crack jokes, right? But people aren't. You know what I'm saying. Sometimes it's hard to be the one that, right? If everybody's being a tzaddik and everybody's having good midot, then it's much easier for us all to do it together, right? But if you believe in the greatness of your soul and the potential of who you are and what Hashem has given you, and you go for it, day after day, you're going to get there, Aleph. You will get there. And Bet, you bring other people up with you. You help it. You make it easier for them. Just like that tzaddik that I was talking about, when he goes when I'm listening in this shiur, right? He's saying, I'm saying, I want to do that. What he did, I want to do. Right? Says the Sfas Emes, 140 years ago, that he said that one of the reasons why it's so important to go to a tzaddik and to see him is because you see someone this is a person who is flesh and blood, and he's reached this unbelievable level. And it makes you realize that you can also reach a high level. It's just self-limitation, right? We stop ourselves. We don't believe that we can really get higher, right? I'll ask you a question here. You don't answer it. Do we really believe that it's possible to get to a place where we never speak or hear a word of Lashon Hara for the rest of our lives?
Absolutely. Yes.
It's difficult. You have a lot of emunah.
I believe.
So that's amazing. That's amazing. I hope, but I have a hard time believing that I'll be able to actually hold up to that. Right? That do we believe? I'll say that about myself. Do I believe that I'll never get angry again for the rest of my life? That even when they're honking me from behind and I'm right and he's wrong, right? And there's lachat, right? That I'll never get upset. I'll never forget that Hashem runs the world. That I could live in a way that that's my life. It's hard for me to believe that, but that's self-limiting. Of course I can live like that. If Hashem told us that you're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara, of course we can live our lives without speaking Lashon Hara forever. Never speak a word of Lashon Hara. Of course we could do that. It's not even a question. Not even a question. If Hashem says, the mitzvah, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha, to be wholehearted and pure-hearted with Hashem. Believe in Hashem. Don't look at the forecast. Don't look at the astrologists. Don't look at the necromancers. Don't look at the New York Times. Don't look at them to tell you what's going to be tomorrow. Tamim tiyeh im Hashem. Oh gosh, that pasuk, the Rashi on that pasuk, the most unbelievable Rashi. It says if you'll be Tamim to Hashem, it says don't look to the future. Just whatever Hashem brings upon you in your life, love Him. Receive it with love. It says, Az tiyeh imo u'lechelko. Then you'll be together with Hashem, and you'll be Hashem's portion in this world. Unbelievable. It was worth it to wake up today just to hear that Rashi. If you do that, you'll be together with Hashem. So is it possible to reach that level? Avada, I can reach that level. Not even a question. But we don't believe it. We don't believe in ourselves, right? You come to a Yid who's reached this level, and you say, oh my goodness, it's possible. It's possible, right? Person who's basimcha, right? Person who has joy in his life. Not stam simcha, because he watched Three Stooges or something, I don't know. Simcha shal mitzvah. You guys don't even know what Three Stooges are. Anybody know Three Stooges? Not three. Old comedy from the old days. But he's reached real simcha. It's possible. I don't have to be depressed. There's so much depression in the world. I don't have to be depressed. Right? I can feel broken about something, but I'm still basimcha. Possible. Amazing. So Rav Kook says if you do that, if you bring it out in yourself, you can even bring other people to that as well. Hashav lematara zo shel ha'itafsherut hazachat shukat gaon ha'uma b'tarata. That's if he does tshuva from that place. I'm doing tshuva not just because I'm scared to get burned in Gehenna, chas v'shalom. I'm doing tshuva because I want the greatness of my soul to be revealed, and I want every Jew in the world, their soul to be revealed to them. I want the Jew in Texas and in Uzbekistan and in China and I want them to feel how holy their soul is and to believe in it. I'm doing tshuva for that place, right? When you do that, that's how you affect. So the point that Rav Kook is saying is Aleph, you have a tremendous effect on the rest of the world. Bet is the way that you do tshuva affects the way you affect the world, right? That makes sense? the context in which I'm doing tshuva, the desire why I'm doing tshuva, that changes how I affect the world, right? It's an amazing thing. It gives a lot of motivation, a lot of inspiration to do tshuva in these ways, to elevate myself in these ways. I've been talking a lot about how during this war that one of the first things that everybody was saying is that how is it possible that we lived in a situation where every couple of months Hamas was throwing rockets into Israel? And so we have this amazing technology. It's all Nisei Nisim that catches the rockets in midair. Like, who else in the world lives in such a situation where it's part of the neighborhood where you get rockets are shot at your house, right, and at your schools, and you have people that are swearing that they want to kill you right next to you and trying every day, and you're just kind of like, all right, well, this is just what it is, right? We live like that for like the last 20 years almost, right? So how's that possible? So the first thing everybody says, we can't, no matter what happens in this war, we cannot go back to the same situation that we were in before, right? The world changed, right? What happened on Simchas Torah, the world changed, and we cannot go back, right? But if we don't want the world to go back, so also we can't go back to who we were before. Do we want just, Bibi and the government to change something? Right? No, we want the world to change. We want Mashiach is what we really want. But if we want a change to really happen, we can't be the same people that we were. We have to also change who we were from before. We can't go back to the same level. We have to be on a higher level, on a much higher level. We have to change, right? And so right now, especially people who in this room, none of us are wearing the green uniform of the IDF, right? So sometimes people are asking, like, what can I do right now? Or how can I affect? Right? So Rav Kook's answer is right here. The way if you realize that what you do affects everybody else in the world, but the way that you do it is what makes a big difference, right? Right now we're learning Torah. We're not learning Torah just for us. We're learning Torah for all the soldiers. We're learning Torah for the 240 captives, right? We're learning Torah for all of Am Yisrael. We're learning Torah for all the confused Jews in the world that we're thinking that peace. You can make peace with animals, right? You can't do that, right? So we're doing tshuva for them, right? We're doing tshuva that all of Am Yisrael should do tshuva, right? So when you do it in that context, you have a huge effect, right? Here it is. Rav Kook says it explicitly. Even you guys might remember that we learned in Likutei Moharan from Rabbi Nachman in Torah Reish Pei Bet in the 282nd Torah there, that he says that when you dan the kafchut, when you judge people favorably, you can actually cause them to do tshuva, right? You never met the person in your life, but you just judge them favorably, you can affect them spiritually so much that they actually become a Baal Tshuva because of you, right? And we said that who knows where all of us got our inspiration from. Maybe somebody was judging us favorably, and all of a sudden we woke up in our lives and said, I have to move to Jerusalem and learn Torah, and, right? Totally uproot myself, right? We affect people. It's amazing. It's amazing interwoven reality in this world. And we have to live our lives in that way. So, let's do one more piece. What do you guys say? Yeah? One, maybe two. Let's see how this one goes. Okay, we're in Vav now. ראש הפסקה שנשמת האומה היא המגמה הכללית. What is how do you translate spitz?
Summit.
The summit. That's great. Translate the two of them, right? The summit, the peak, the highest point. What's the highest point in the soul of Am Yisrael, of the nation? Meaning, what's the greatest quality? What's the greatest the expression, the greatest quality? So he says, is the megama klalit, is the general goal. That's not a good translation. It's the goal for the entire community, for the entire world, right? Am Yisrael has a responsibility towards the world, right? We'll finish the sentence and then we'll go into it. That the essence of this nation of Am Yisrael is that we are not just for ourselves, right? I saw at the beginning of this war, I saw a speech by the mayor of New York City, and it's an African American gentleman, and he was speaking very, very strong about, we stand with Israel, we stand against terror, and he was saying, he said he's talking to the Jewish community. He said, we're not going to put up with anti-Semitism, And he said, you marched with us with Martin Luther King. You marched with us, right? In America at that time, it was the African American community and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stood by them, and in all these contexts, what were the Jewish people doing in that? And, where does that come from, right? Where does that come from? In every area of human society today, where people are trying to make the world better on some level, you have a disproportionate amount of Jewish people there, right? Where you understand, like Peace Corps. I mean, all kinds of anything that's trying to make the Doctors Without Borders, right? All these initiatives that the world has, many of them come from Jewish people to try to make the world a better place, right? Even the whole world of psychology, right? And therapy is a Jewish construct, right? To try to help ease the pain, the psychological pain of human beings, right? All the Jewish people are always on the forefront of trying to make the world better on global movements and everything. Where does that come from? He says, Rav Kook says that's built into us. The essence of our national soul is to want everything to be better for everybody, not just for us. Right? We don't just think about ourselves. It's not Jewish. Judaism is it's not just me, it's also you. Right? He says, "V'zeh kvar yotzeh el klalut havaya, v'rayon haTeshuva yon nautz b'menom chavyon zeh." And embedded in this element of the Jewish soul is tshuva, is exalted tshuva. What does that mean? It's very, very beautiful. What's the problem with all the Jews in Peace Corps and Doctors Without Borders and all these wonderful initiatives? There's no problem. It's great, right? But a lot of them are missing one piece, and this is how kind of that compass, that the Jewish compass can get lost when they're right. I've seen there's lots of, I don't even know if they're really Jews, but I've seen groups of Jews protesting against Israel right now. Not in our name, they say, right?
Why?
Because of the poor Palestinians and all that whole narrative,
And the post-Zionist,
right? Or anti-Zionist or whatever it is, but even that, it's coming. If they're really Yidden, I don't know, but it's coming from a place of, we want good for the world, we want equality, we believe in equal rights, we believe in right, which is all true. It's wonderful. It goes without saying, right? We don't. Of course, we believe in equal rights. Of course, we believe in everybody should have right. It's so built into the Jewish psyche that it should be good and humane to other people, and chesed and rachamim for everybody, that we don't even have to talk about that. If you talk about it, it's almost like an insult. Of course, that's built in, right? We don't just go to war because we decided we don't like the way our neighbors look, right? Or we're anti-Islam. We don't do that, right? We've never been like that. But so ultimately, the ultimate desire to make the world a better place, right? Mashiachist, Am Yisrael is Mashiachistic. We just want Mashiach. We want the Geula, right? Not in any particular one way or another, right? But it has to come from tshuva. It's not just about that everybody should be well fed. It's not just about that everybody should have equal rights in the government and where they live, and there shouldn't be oppression. It's not enough. We have to have God in the picture. Am Yisrael wants. We've been commissioned by Hashem, and we've been created and built by Hashem in a way to bring the world back to Hashem, to be mashlim, to fix the world entirely, and it's built into our DNA, right? And that's the beautiful thing of Am Yisrael, is that they're driven to make the world a better place, but it has to be from this place of tshuva also, right? Because that's really built into it. The reason why, right? You want everyone to have equal rights. In order that, you want everybody to have health care. In order that, you want there to be a world without oppression. You want there to be financial security for everybody. You want education, right? You don't want racism. In order that, what? So we just all can live and go to school and learn math and English? That's not it. That's one. It's a decent start. First let's stop like killing each other and hating each other and putting people in different sides of the room because of their skin color and all that kind of stuff. First let's just be like just basic human beings and like realize, right? After that, hey, it's a Ribbon Shalom. That's where we're going for. It's all for that. But you can't even talk about the Ribbon Shalom if And when you guys might not believe it because I'm not so old, but when I was in high school, the cafeteria, the lunchroom was separated by your skin color. And if you sat on the wrong side of the room, it wasn't like that wasn't the rule. It wasn't it wasn't because of the school. That was just built into the society, right? And on the first day of school, a buddy of mine sat on the side where it was the African American side, and they told him, "You got about 10 seconds to get up and to go over to that side of the cafeteria," right? And there, it was clear, right? 3 sections of the cafeteria, and you knew exactly where you were allowed to sit and where you weren't allowed to sit, right? Huh? It's pretty amazing, right? Yeah. I don't know if it's still like that, but that's what it was, 30 years ago, 20, 25 years ago. So, first of all, can we just be B'nai Adam? First of all, let's just be human beings. Like, what are you talking about? Of course, it doesn't matter, And Israel is a country where even though there is abyssal racism here, but like in general, like who cares, right? Do we even think about it? Do we even think about that? Where I live, you have people who the husband and wife look very different. They come from 100 years ago, their ancestors couldn't talk with each other because they lived in different countries, right? Who cares? Who cares? Our job, it's beautiful, You make a Yemenite soup with Ashkenazi matzah balls, okay, it's beautiful, right? It has nothing to do with anything. Why are you guys making a big deal out of it? So, but the next step is the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the ikar of everything. It's placed into that, right? And it's only when Jews lose their compass of tshuva and they take God out of the picture. But even though they take God out of the picture, but that place inside of their soul still drives them to try to make the world a better place and to bring the world to unity and all that. Okay, I think we'll stop here for today, gentlemen.
Thank you.